So this is the first of 2 sheets that you're going to be printing off. For the model enigma that we're creating, you won't need rotor 4 or 5, and you won't need reflector C. But what you do need to do is very, very precisely cut around reflector B, and also cutting at the end here. I'll just highlight this in red. It's important that you cut here along that pale grey line. Okay, so cut along that pale grey line there. Exactly. And also when you cut down the line between reflector B and C where you've got the dots, just cut to make sure that you still see the dots. Okay, so don't cut the dots out. The dots will be helpful to you when you assemble it. So basically cut out reflector B and make it as accurate as you can. And then that means you can discard the rest of this bit of paper. This is the second page that you will have cut out. Now you are going to need most of this page. You won't need the little ones at the bottom here, so you don't need these. So I'm going to highlight that you don't need these ones, so you can leave these out. But you do need to cut around rotor 1, rotor 2, rotor 3, and also the input. You don't need this bit here, so I'll also highlight this bit here that you don't need. You don't need that. So that's okay, but you do need the input, and that again is very careful cutting. You need to cut along this grey line at the top here, and then when you cut and split the rotors into your 3 separate rotors, make sure you cut nicely around here at the curves at the bottom here, and very, very carefully down the middle so that you split those little black circles in half, all right, so that they appear on both rotors as you split those apart. So that's really important, and you also need this one as well. Okay, so you need rotor 1, 2, 3, and also your input and output. So you can see here I have started to do some cutting. I've cut my reflector B, and therefore I now have discarded this bit because I don't need it. And likewise with the other sheet, I've cut out the things I need, rotors 1, 2, 3, and the input output, and I now don't need this bit, and I can discard that. So here are the 4 things that we're going to be needing, 5 things we're going to be needing for our paper enigma machine. We've got the reflector plate here, so let's just highlight what we've got. We've got reflector B. Now that mimics the reflector in the enigma machine. And then we've got 3 rotors, 1, 2 and 3, and they need to be in that order. So make sure that you are ordered left to right, rotors 1, 2 and 3, though that is going to replicate the behaviour of the rotors in the enigma machine. And this is like your keyboard. So this will represent the letters that you key into your enigma machine to get your output. Now, the way it's going to work when it's assembled is, I will explain in more detail, but a quick overview is that you're going to put your rotor settings together first, because they're going to be rotatable. We'll show you how that will work in a minute. So your rotors will be able to rotate around your Pringle can. You'll set those up first. Then you will look in your input column and find a letter that you want to decrypt, and you will follow it through the route through these coloured lines over to the reflector plate. You'll come back round the reflector plate, back through the coloured lines through the rotors, and it will then give you an output. So notice that this says input output. Some of you who are completely switched on may be thinking, where's the light board? Well, this column here represents the keyboard and the light board, because you're going to be following back from the reflector plate, back through the rotors, and then arriving at a letter mimicking the light board. So that strip is the keyboard and the light board, and so you don't need to have a light board strip as well. So what I've done here is I have, and I want you to do the same, is to line up, just because this will help you with assembly, line up all of the 5 strips with these little grey bars, pale grey bars, going all the way across. Now, they don't have to stay like this, but there is some really important things that we need to, outcomes that we need once it's built. Once it's built, it's really important that the input and the reflector are aligned. So I want to make sure that you're taking note of that now, okay? So whatever, the input and the reflector need to be aligned. So having Q, E and V lined up as well helps you to sort of see that alignment all the way through, even though the 3 rotors do rotate. Okay, so you can see that actually is a really important alignment there, right across, and it actually needs to be quite precise. The more precise it is, and I'll draw it again so you can see that I do want it to be precise, the more precise you have with this alignment, the more successful your Enigma machine is going to be, or easier to read. Okay, so it's going to go through all those black dots until you get to the black dot on the reflector plate. So that's what you're aiming for on your Pringles can, so be mindful of that. Okay, so the Pringles can I've used is a slightly shorter one than the kind of the full long Pringles cans. I find them just a bit more easy to work with, and then you don't have a big overlap at the top of Pringle can that you don't need. First thing to do is to get a marker pen and, as accurately as you can, draw a straight line down the outside of the Pringles can, which will act as a bit of a guide for you for lining up your pieces of paper. So draw your line on your Pringles can now. Now, what I've done in this first piece is on the far left-hand side of the Pringles can, so at the bottom of the Pringles can, you have to put the reflector plate, okay, the reflector piece of paper. Now, what you do is, where you've laid it out on your desk, you pick up your reflector plate and you line up the bottom of the grey bar with the line you've drawn on your Pringles can. Okay, so you've got some alignment there that you can use. So you've got the bottom of the grey bar and you're going to line that up with your Pringles can. So I'll just write that in yellow, it's a bit easier to see there. Okay, and then now you're going to stick this down onto your Pringles can. You only need to stick it really in one place. So just dob a bit of glue underneath the grey bar and then stick it down so that it's butted up to that line, and then run the paper around the Pringles can, stick a little bit of glue under here, so a little bit of glue there underneath, using a Pritt stick, and just then stick that over the top so that it's married up with the grey line. Now, what's really important, as best you can, you want to get the blue line and the red line and the green line and this blue line in here, you want them all lined up nicely so that there isn't any mismatch between the lines. Okay, so I've nearly done it perfectly. I think I've got a little bit out there. I should have probably just cut my grey line a bit more accurately when I cut it out. So that's your first bit of reflector that goes on, a bit of paper that goes on, that's the reflector plate, and you stick it down onto the Pringles can. So this one mustn't move, okay, so mustn't move. Really important to make sure that that is firmly fixed to the Pringles can. Okay, so the next one along your Pringles can, so if you imagine you've got your Pringles can now, just do a quick sketch, you've got your Pringles can now, and you've got your reflector B already fixed onto your Pringles can, so you've already got that there. You now need to fix rotor 1 on, so rotor 1 is going to go on next. So the way to do that is to line it up so that you're putting a little bit of glue on that little curved bit, on the front of that curved bit. You can see I've put some glue on this bit here. and then you basically wrap it around the Pringles can, not so tight that it won't move, but not so loose that it moves lots, okay? But you must not stick this to the Pringle can, okay? So this is not to be stuck to the Pringle can, but to be stuck to itself. And that's so that the rotor will move around the Pringle can, okay? So do not stick this to the Pringle can, only bring the paper round and then marry up the other end of the Pringle can so it's perfectly aligned with the grey line. So align it with the grey line. And you'll see a video in a minute where I've done just that. Okay, so that needs to be able to move. So hopefully by watching this video you can see that the rotor that I've fixed around the Pringles can is free to move around the Pringles can, and that it's perfectly lined up with the grey line so that there isn't any gaps, all the lines perfectly linked together and match up. Okay, so I've done a little video here to just show you how those rotor 2 and rotor 3 get fitted on. So in this video I'm showing you the very last piece going in, which is the input-output sheet. Really important here that the grey bar on the input-output sheet is perfectly lined with the grey bar on the reflector plate. So to help you do that, you can line up the QEV boxes because they're also grey, so that will help you to see the line through. But although the rotors move, the fixed reflector and inputs, they need to stay perfectly aligned along those black dots for it to work really successfully. So take care over this and make sure that you do yours as accurately as you can.